Welcome to the Classic Soap Operas podcast.
Hi, everyone.
Get ready to dive deep into a true titan of television history, a show that holds the record for the longest-running American soap opera, Guiding Light.
It's honestly hard to even wrap your head around the sheer scale of this show. I mean, we're talking about an incredible, unprecedented 72-year run.
72 years, that's just staggering.
Right. It started way back on radio in 1937 and finally came to an end on CBS television in 2009. Think about that 72 years.
That's not just a television show, that's like generations of viewers, countless characters.
Exactly. And a mind-boggling amount of intertwined storylines woven across almost three-quarters of a century. It's really the definition of an epic.
Absolutely epic. And our mission today is to really unpack that fascinating, sprawling journey. We're going to explore the unique origins of this iconic series, trace its evolution through groundbreaking moments.
Dive headfirst into some of its most legendary and, sometimes wild storylines.
Oh, definitely wild ones. We'll look at the significant production changes it navigated over the decades, and finally, how it all came to a final, memorable end.
And we've been sifting through the wealth of material you've shared with us to pull out the most compelling nuggets of knowledge and insight for you.
So prepare yourselves for some surprising facts. Maybe a reunion with unforgettable characters you know?
Or perhaps are discovering for the first time, and a real look behind the curtain of a show that didn't just air during daytime television history, it actively shaped it.
Yeah, it really did set precedents, pushed boundaries for decades.
It's a story as dramatic and enduring as the show itself, truly.
All right, let's rewind all the way back. Before the decades of television, before the sprawling families, where did this giant begin? What was the genesis of Guiding Light?
Okay, so it all starts with its creation by two pivotal figures, Erna Phillips and Emmons Carlson.
Erna Phillips, just a legendary name in the history of serialized drama.
Oh, absolutely. She's often referred to, quite rightly, as the mother of the soap opera. Her influence on the genre, well, it just cannot be overstated.
And her inspiration for Guiding Light wasn't just some creative idea, it was something incredibly personal, wasn't it? Born from profound loss.
It truly was. Erna Phillips faced a deep personal tragedy early in her life. She gave birth to a stillborn baby when she was just 19 years old.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and in the wake of that devastating loss, she found a great deal of spiritual comfort listening to the radio sermons of a famous Chicago preacher named Preston Bradley.
And he wasn't just any preacher, right? He was pretty influential.
No, Bradley was quite influential. He was the founder of the People's Church in Chicago, and the core message of his ministry was promoting tolerance, understanding, and importantly, the brotherhood of man.
So that search for comfort, for guidance, that's what sparked it.
That's exactly it. That search for a sense of connection and community during a period of intense personal pain and searching, that's what really sparked Erna Phillips's idea for a serial drama about people seeking guidance and solace.
Knowing that makes the name The Guiding Light so much more than just, a catchy title. It takes on this incredibly poignant, almost spiritual meaning.
Exactly. And this is where it gets really interesting and maybe surprising for modern viewers.
Okay.
The guiding light in the show's title didn't originally refer to a physical beacon or like a mystical force, or even necessarily divine guidance in a purely religious sense.
No, what was it then?
It referred quite literally to the lamp that was kept burning in the study of the central character in the early radio days, Reverend John Rutledge.
A lamp.
Yeah.
In a study. That was the guiding light.
That was it. It was meant to be a simple, tangible beacon assigned to anyone in the fictional town of 5 Points, and later Springfield, who was in trouble or needed help. They knew where to go to find understanding and guidance.
Wow. Think about that for a moment. A simple lamp in a study, serving as the namesake for a show that would explore the human condition for 72 years.
It's such a beautiful, grounded starting point for something so vast, isn't it?
Definitely. So from that lamp, the show began its life not on television, but on the radio waves.
Right. It premiered as a 15-minute serial on NBC Radio on January 25, 1937.
15 minutes. Can you imagine trying to tell stories that would eventually span decades in just 15-minute chunks?
It's wild to think about the pacing compared to later hour-long episodes. It stayed on NBC Radio until 1947 when it transferred over to CBS Radio, where it continued its run.
So it built its audience and its legacy first as a radio hit, and then the monumental jump to the new medium, the small screen.
Yes, the transition to television happened when it debuted on CBS television on June 30, 1952. But here's one of those truly fascinating details that highlights the transitional era of media.
What's that?
From 1952 to 1956, Guiding Light existed as both a radio and a television serial simultaneously.
At the same time, for 4 years. How on earth did they manage that?
It was an incredible workload. The actors would actually perform and record their parts twice a day, once for the radio broadcast, which was often live or near live,
Wow.
and then again for the television version, which was also typically performed live in those early TV days.
That's insane. Think about that dedication. Performing the same episode twice, day after day, for 4 years.
That level of commitment is almost unthinkable today. The radio broadcast finally ceased in June 1956, bringing that unique, intense dual-platform period to an end.
And with that full transition to television, the central focus of the show also began to shift, right? Away from Reverend Rutledge and towards a new family.
It did. While Reverend Rutledge remained a presence for a time, the Bowers, a German immigrant family who were first introduced on the radio version in 1948, really became the main focus on the television show.
They were the foundation for the TV era.
Absolutely. Representing that core message of hard work, family values, finding your way in a new land.
Who were the key members of the Bauer family that listeners should know from these early TV years?
Okay, so at the heart of the family was the patriarch, Friedrich,
Yeah.
known affectionately to everyone as Papa Bauer.
Papa Bauer, a classic character.
He was the embodiment of the American dream narrative of the time, came to the U.S. with very little, just a few dollars, succeeded through sheer hard work and determination. He instilled that incredibly strong work ethic in his children.
And then there was his son Bill and Bill's wife.
Bert,
Bertha.
yeah, but always called Bert.
And the dynamic between Papa, Bill, and Bert really drove a lot of the early family story.
Absolutely. Papa Bauer was the steady, wise, sort of salt-of-the-earth figure. Bert, on the other hand, was a bit more aspirational, dreaming of climbing the social ladder, keeping up appearances.
Ah, the classic dynamic.
Right. Much the early drama, and actually some of the show's gentle humor, came from Bill, and sometimes even Papa Bauer himself, having to gently bring Bert down to earth, reminding her of their core values. It wasn't always huge conflicts, often just relatable family stuff.
And that grounded approach found an audience quickly on TV.
It did. Guiding Light became the #1 rated soap opera relatively quickly, holding that top spot briefly in 56 and 57.
Briefly.
Yeah, because then another absolute titan came along, As the World Turns, which took over the #1 position in 1958.
And that shift at the top coincided with a significant change behind the scenes for Guiding Light, too.
It did. The show's creator, Erna Phillips, moved her main focus over to self, As the World Turns in 58, to help establish it.
And her protege took over Guiding Light.
Exactly. Agnes Nixon, another name synonymous with groundbreaking daytime drama, creator of All My Children and One Life to Live, became the head writer for Guiding Light. So you see this passing of the torch even early on.
Before we move on from these formative years, we absolutely have to acknowledge a behind-the-scenes figure who provided incredible stability.
Yes, Lucy Ferry Rittenberg. She was the first television producer for Guiding Light, starting right when it launched on TV in 52, and she held that role for over 20 years.
20 years! That's amazing longevity in television, especially daytime.
Incredibly rare. She was a constant presence steering the ship for over 2 decades. Really foundational.
All right, let's transition into the 60s and 70s. This is where the show really started to expand, technically, narratively.
Yeah.
It evolved in some pretty significant ways.
Right. The 60s saw Agnes Nixon eventually step down as head writer in 1965. She moved on to develop other projects, including working on Another World.
And technically, we hit some major milestones that were like a huge deal for viewers back then.
Oh, absolutely. One of the biggest visual changes was the show first broadcasting in color. That happened on March 13th, 1967.
Imagine seeing Springfield in color for the first time after years of black and white.
Must have been quite something, right? Fundamentally changing the whole look and feel.
And the episodes themselves started getting longer, too.
Yes, on September 9, 1968, the program expanded from 15 minutes to a full 30 minutes.
Doubling the story time.
Exactly. Allowed for more complex plots, more character development, and around this same time, they also finally transitioned away from live broadcast and started pre-taping episodes.
The cast must have breathed a sigh of relief.
Can you imagine going from performing live twice a day for years to pre-taping? Must have felt like a vacation.
Now, the 1960s also saw Guiding Light make some genuinely important, really groundbreaking steps in terms of representation on American television.
This is a point that really stands out when you look back. Starting in the 1960s, the show began introducing black characters, and they were played by actors who would go on to become absolute legends,
Legends like.
like Billy D. Williams, James Earl Jones, Ruby Dee, and Cicely Tyson.
Wow. That's incredible talent. And what's truly fascinating here is how early Guiding Light was in bringing this level of diverse representation to the forefront of daytime TV.
In the 1960s, yeah, a time of significant social change. And the show was actively featuring prominent black actors developing their characters. That feels incredibly significant and progressive for the time.
It absolutely was pioneering. It wasn't just tokenism. These were significant actors in meaningful roles.
And the storylines also started to shift focus, moving more towards the next generation of the Bauer family, Bill and Bert's children, Mike and Ed.
And in a dramatic turn, that would become a classic soap opera trope. Bill Bauer himself was written out in July 1969.
Ah, yes, the dreaded, or perhaps beloved, soap opera Presumed Death. Bill was presumed dead after a plane crash.
Of course, as any soap fan knows, presumed dead usually means...
Oh, we'll return later, probably at the most inconvenient moment possible. Foreshadowing.
Exactly. And on the topical front, which the Dobsons would later emphasize even more, the show incorporated a very real-world health issue.
Yes, one of the most memorable storylines from this era was Bert Bauer's diagnosis of uterine cancer in 1962.
That wasn't just a minor plot point, was it?
No, not at all. It was a significant story that followed her journey through diagnosis and treatment. Really quite groundbreaking for its time.
This really raises an important question. How did incorporating these kinds of serious real-world health issues like cancer shape the audience connection to the show?
I think it made the show feel incredibly relatable and vital. Bert Bauer was such a beloved central character, the heart of the family.
Right.
Seeing her face such a serious illness, something that was a reality for so many viewers, must have resonated deeply. It allowed the show to explore fear, hope, family support, the medical realities of the time.
Moved beyond just melodrama.
Exactly. Added a layer of authenticity that could forge a stronger bond with the audience.
They also started introducing new characters who would stick around and become important parts of the canvas.
Definitely. A key introduction in the mid to late 60s was Dr. Sarah McIntyre.
Yeah.
She was a significant character, especially in the medical storylines, and remained a major presence through the early 80s.
Okay, turning the corner into the 70s, the show seemed to embrace a bit more crime and suspense.
The early 70s definitely had a stronger focus on crime storylines. A major plot that dominated much of 1971 was the murder of Stanley Norris in November and the subsequent trial. Added a different kind of tension.
And this era gave us some truly memorable, classic soap opera villainists, didn't it?
Oh yes, the exploits of Charlotte Waring and Kit Vested were certainly dramatic, no shortage of scheming there.
What happened with them?
Well, Charlotte was murdered by Kit in 73, classic soap opera revenge. And then the following year, Kit herself was shot in self-defense by Dr. Joe Werner after she tried to poison Dr. Sarah McIntyre.
Wow, poison. High drama.
Definitely edge-of-your-seat stuff for viewers back then.
And then, on April 1st, 1971, a character arrived who would become truly pivotal, a complex figure who helped define the show's dramatic potential for years. Roger Thorpe.
Roger Thorpe. His introduction is actually a fascinating bit of casting history.
Oh, how so?
The role was originally conceived quite differently, intended for a blonde, preppy type, charming antagonist dating the boss's daughter, Holly. But the casting director, Betty Rea, had this intuition.
And hired Michael Zaslow instead.
Exactly. A dark-haired actor with a completely different energy. And Zaslow took the character in a direction that wasn't just some simple, preppy guy.
No, he made Roger much more complex.
Far more complicated, multifaceted. He wasn't just bad. He was driven by ambition, insecurity, a twisted sense of loyalty, especially towards Holly. This complexity made him captivating, even when he was doing terrible things.
He quickly became a cornerstone.
Absolutely. Drove storylines for decades. Michael Zaslow's portrayal was just brilliant.
A sad moment in the early 70s was the loss of the actor who played the beloved patriarch, Papa Bauer.
Yes, Theo Goots, who had played Papa Bauer since the radio days in '48, died in 1972. A profound loss for the cast, crew, and the audience. He'd been Papa Bauer for nearly 25 years.
So the production decided to write his death into the show.
They did. It was a difficult decision, but I think a respectful one. They handled his departure with a special tribute.
A memorial episode.
Yes, a very special memorial episode aired in February 1973. It was a way for Springfield to mourn, but also for the real-life cast to pay tribute to Theo Goots. Highlighted that deep connection between actors, characters, and the audience.
As the 70s progressed, Guiding Light started feeling pressure from newer soaps, right? More youth-oriented ones.
Yes, shows like All My Children, created by Agnes Nixon, were becoming really popular, felt more contemporary. Procter & Gamble, who produced Guiding Light, felt the need to adapt.
So they brought in new writers in 75.
Right. A new head writing team, Bridget and Jerome Dobson.
And then the Dobsons are credited with bringing a very distinct style to the show.
They were. They ushered in what's often described as a more nuanced, psychologically layered style, delved deeper into character motivations, internal conflicts.
And more timely stories.
Yes, they made a point of incorporating more timely social issues, making it feel more relevant to the changing times.
And they introduced some absolutely crucial characters and complex relationships that would define the show for years.
Absolutely. Key players arrived during the Dobson era. They crafted that incredibly complex, almost magnetic love-hate relationship between Roger and Holly Thorpe, who were estranged spouses and, bizarrely, step-siblings.
Step-siblings, only in soaps.
Right. They introduced Rita Stapleton, played by the unforgettable Lenore Kasdorf, whose complicated relationships, especially with Roger and Ed Bauer, drove major stories.
And two pillars arrived then too, didn't they?
Yes. Mogul Alan Spaulding, powerful, often morally ambiguous, and the charming, brash, but fundamentally decent lawyer Ross Marler. These characters added whole new dimensions.
And in perhaps one of the most classic soap opera moves possible, a character presumed dead for years made a dramatic return.
Bill Bauer. His surprising reappearance in 1977. He'd been presumed dead since that plane crash back in '69.
His return must have caused chaos.
Oh, definitely. Didn't just mean he was back, it added a whole new layer of complications and legal troubles, right?
Yes, indeed. Upon his return, Bill faced legal issues. He was charged with the rape of a man in Vancouver.
Wow.
Yeah. In a dramatic courtroom storyline, he was eventually acquitted, thanks partly to his son Mike's legal skills.
So Bill didn't stick around permanently.
No, his return was impactful, but he had several more departures and brief returns throughout the late 70s and early 80s. Never quite settled back in. And his return also introduced a new member to the extended Bauer family.
It did. Hillary Kincaid. She was Bill's daughter from a relationship during the years he was presumed dead, making her Ed and Mike's half-sister.
And there was another complication, an extra layer of Soapy complexity. The man Hillary originally believed was her father, her stepfather, had accidentally been killed by Bill years prior.
Good grief. Talk about a tangled web.
Yeah.
Family connections, death, hidden identities. Classic soap.
Absolutely.
On a sadder note, the show made a controversial decision to end the story of a young heroine around this time. In June 1976, when actress Lynn Adams decided to leave, the Dobsons made the decision to kill off her character. Leslie Jackson Bauer, Nors Bauer.
How does she die?
A hit-and-run accident. Her father, Steve Jackson, stayed on the show for a while, which kept a connection. But killing off Leslie was quite controversial and unpopular with fans.
The show also made a subtle but official change to its name visually.
Yes, in November 1975, they officially dropped the from the Guiding Light in the opening and closing titles. Became just Guiding Light.
Though people probably still called it the Guiding Light for a while.
Announcers and characters sometimes still did for several years. Old habits.
And the show continued its trend of expanding its broadcast time.
Yes, November 7, 1977, Guiding Light expanded again, this time to a full hour. 2:30 to 3:40 p.m. daily.
A full hour. That's a major step. Doubling the daily story time again.
Allowed for even more intricate plots, more character interactions. Big change.
Moving into the 80s, we saw yet more shifts in writing leadership and the focus of the show.
Right. Bridget and Jerome Dobson moved on to 12, As the World Turns in late '79. And Douglas Marland, another highly respected writer, took over as head writer for Guiding Light.
And he brought in a significant new family, didn't he?
He did. Marland introduced many new characters, but most notably, the entire Reardon family became a central part of the canvas, a way to inject new dynamics alongside the Bauers and Spauldings.
And this era brought the show its first major industry recognition for overall quality.
Yes. May 1980, Guiding Light won its first Outstanding Drama Series Daytime Emmy. Huge milestone. Showed it was popular and critically acclaimed.
But Douglas Marland's tenure also included a major storyline that ended in significant controversy and his own departure.
Yes, the Carrie Todd Marler storyline, played by the phenomenal Jane Elliott. Marland wrote this complex, groundbreaking story where Carrie was diagnosed with multiple personalities.
Tackling a really sensitive psychological issue on daytime.
Exactly. And they were exploring it with depth. but the story wasn't allowed to reach its full conclusion.
Why not? What happened?
Tragically, Jane Elliott's contract was abruptly terminated by the executive producer at the time, Alan M. Potter, in 1982. This happened before Marlon could fully explore and conclude the storyline.
And Marlon took a strong stance against that.
He did. Douglas Marlon famously resigned as head writer in protest. He felt business decisions had overridden his creative vision for a complex narrative.
It really raises that question about creative control versus business realities, doesn't it?
Definitely. How much should executive decisions impact a writer's plan, especially with sensitive topics? It highlighted that tension between art and commerce in the soap world.
The early 80s also saw the show make a conscious effort to appeal to a younger demographic.
They definitely shifted emphasis towards younger characters. This was strategic, industry-wide, really, trying to capture a new generation and compete with more youth-skewing shows.
And that strategic shift meant some longtime characters, sadly, faded from view.
Unfortunately, yes. A number of beloved characters were gradually eliminated. Figures like Ben and Eve McFerrin, Diane Ballard, Dr. Sarah McIntyre, Adam Thorpe, Barbara Norris Thorpe, Justin Marler, Steve Jackson.
Changed the texture of the show for longtime viewers.
It did, and when Lenore Kasdorf quit in '81, they decided not to recast the hugely popular Rita Stapleton Bauer. The character was just gone.
A truly significant and deeply emotional moment in the 80s, both in the show and for the audience, was the death of the Bauer family matriarch.
Bert Bauer died in March 1986. This followed, sadly, the real-life death of the iconic actress who played her for decades, Charita Bauer, in 1985.
Bert's death must have been enormous within the show.
Huge, but also a moment of collective mourning for the audience. Charita Bauer was Bert Bauer for so many viewers, in their homes for over 30 years. It truly felt like the passing of an era.
Didn't Charita Bauer receive an award posthumously?
Yes, she was posthumously awarded the first-ever Daytime Emmy for Distinguished Service to Daytime Television in 1985. Recognize her incredible contribution.
In the wake of that loss, and maybe sensing mixed reactions to newer families, the show made a pledge to return to its roots.
For the show's 50th anniversary in 1987, 50 years since radio, there was a stated commitment to showcase the Bauer family more prominently again.
This was after focusing on the Lewises and Shanes, which some viewers didn't like as much.
Yeah, reception had been a bit divisive for some longtime viewers who missed the focus on the original core family.
And out of that pledge came a beloved tradition that lasted until the very end.
The tradition of the Bauer family, July 4th barbecue, started in '87. Became an annual event, a guaranteed moment each summer to see the whole Bauer clan gather.
A comforting touchstone for viewers.
Exactly. A literal and figurative return to the family's roots.
A key figure who shaped the show for much of the 80s was head writer Pamela K. Long.
Pam Long became head writer in '83 with Gail Colby as EP. Her first stint was incredibly impactful, especially because she focused on the Four Musketeers.
The young love quadrangle.
Right. Rick Bauer, Philip Spaulding, Mindy Lewis, and Beth Raines. Their interconnected lives became a driving force for the younger set.
And Long also brought in two absolutely essential, long-lasting characters who became defining figures.
Yes, she brought in the formidable Alexandra Spaulding, played by the veteran powerhouse Beverly McKinsey.
And arguably the face of Guiding Light for its later decades.
Reva Shane, played by the incredible four-time Emmy winner Kim Zimmer. These two characters, Alexandra and Reva, along with the Four Musketeers, truly revitalized the show, injected massive energy and drama.
Pam Long returned for a second stint later in the decade, too.
Yes, she was back from 1987 to 1990, continuing to guide the narrative.
In the late 80s saw some familiar faces return.
Maureen Garrett reprised her iconic role as Holly Thorpe in '88, bringing back that complex dynamic.
And Roger Thorpe.
The fantastic Michael Zaslow returned as Roger in 1989. Their returns were a huge deal for longtime fans, injecting classic GL drama back into the show.
Okay, moving into the 90s. There was a sense of trying to evolve the writing style again. Maybe more realism, but keeping core families central.
Exactly. New writers trying to lean a bit more towards realism, but keeping the Bauers, Spauldings, Lewises, and the Coopers, who were becoming more prominent at the heart of things.
And how was the show doing ratings-wise in the 90s?
Generally held pretty steady. Not always at the very top, but a solid, reliable performer in the middle of the pack, had a dedicated audience.
But 1993 seems like it was a particularly tough year for the show. Some significant casting departures.
It really was challenging. Lost 3 leading actresses within months. Beverly McKinsey as Alexandra Spaulding.
Huge loss. Alexandra was such a catalyst.
Absolutely. Kimberly Sims as Mindy Lewis, also beloved,
Yeah.
and Sherry Stringfield as Blake Thorpe. Losing characters of that caliber were significant blows.
But perhaps the most controversial decision of the decade, maybe one of the show's biggest mistakes, involved killing off a beloved character.
Ah, yes. The death of Maureen Bauer, played so beautifully by Ellen Parker. Happened in '93, still discussed today. Many felt it was a moment the show struggled to recover from.
It was a particularly heartbreaking story. Remind us what happened.
Maureen discovered her husband, Ed Bauer, had had an affair with her friend Lillian Raines.
And there was a complex context, right? Like an act of mercy because Lillian had cancer.
Yeah, the storyline provided that context, which is complicated. But for Maureen, it was still a profound betrayal. Ed tracked her down to the Bauer cabin after she left.
And she confronted him.
Oh, yeah. Didn't hold back. Reminded him he'd cheated before with Holly. Her line, "You have broken my heart," became instantly iconic. So heartbreaking.
And then the tragedy.
Maureen, emotionally shattered, left the cabin, drove off on a wintry day. Her car skidded off the road, and she died from her injuries. Absolutely devastating for the characters in the audience.
Many fans were really angered by that decision.
Definitely. It raises that question about audience reaction versus creative choices. Killing off someone like Maureen, who represented the heart of the Bauer family for a generation, was a huge risk.
And in this case, it seemed to alienate a lot of viewers.
It really did. It shows the power of that audience-character bond. While dramatically potent, it felt like a loss of a vital piece of the show for many.
Around this time, there were also changes happening with the executive producer role.
Yes, Jill Fahrenfeldz took over. And it's common for producers to bring in actors they've worked with before. She'd worked on Santa Barbara.
So we saw some Santa Barbara faces pop up in Springfield.
Exactly. Actors like Justin Diaz, who came in as the long-lost Cooper patriarch, Buzz Cooper, and Marge Ducey, who took over the role of Alexandra Spaulding after McKinsey left.
Brought in talented people, but not all the new castings or storylines clicked, did they?
No, that's true. For example, bringing in former Santa Barbara star Marcy Walker as Tangi Hill and pairing her with Josh Lewis, that proved unpopular.
The chemistry didn't work.
Didn't resonate. Walker didn't renew her contract in '94. Shows that bringing in talent isn't always a guarantee win if the story doesn't work.
And even some fan-favorite returns didn't quite meet expectations.
When Nola Chamberlain, played by Lisa Brown, returned in '95, many were excited. But her returning without her husband Quentin was unpopular. They were seen as a unit.
But there was a happy return connecting to the past.
Yes, soap veteran Mary Stewart, beloved from Search for Tomorrow, joined in '96 as Meta Bauer, Papa Bauer's sister, a character mentioned but not seen for years. She was a wonderful addition, stayed until her death in 2002. A lovely connection to the show's deep past.
As the 90s wore on, it felt like the show started to drift away from that attempt at realism and embrace storylines that were, well, significantly more outlandish.
Oh, definitely. The later half of the decade may be feeling pressure from shows like Passions or Days. Guiding Light started featuring plots that were undeniably wild, bordering on the surreal sometimes.
And often leading the charge in this era was Reva Shane.
Kim Zimmer's Reva already had a history of dramatic plots, presumed dead for 5 years after driving off a bridge. But after her return, the plots got even crazier.
Crazier how? Amnesia, royalty, time travel.
Check, check, and check. Reva was, at various points, an amnesiac Amish woman, the former queen of the fictional island nation San Cristobal, and yes, even time travel. You almost needed a scorecard.
But the single most notable, maybe infamous, outlandish twist from this era, the one people still talk about.
The clone storyline, 1998. Josh Lewis, again believing Reva was dead, this time a plane crash, had her cloned.
Cloned. Seriously.
Yes, you heard that right. Introduced a clone of Reva Shane. It sounds completely bonkers.
It absolutely was. Stretched belief even for a soap. Controversial, met with eye rolls. However,
There's a however.
bizarrely enough, this storyline actually brought a brief, significant ratings resurgence that summer. People were talking about GL again, even if it was just to say, can you believe they cloned Reva? Shock value translated into viewership temporarily. Beyond storylines, the 90s also presented external challenges like time slot issues.
This was major. The O.J. Simpson trial in the mid-90s led many CBS affiliates to preempt Guiding Light for trial coverage.
So they moved the show.
Yeah, forced affiliates to move it to early morning slots. Fundamentally disrupted viewing habits for the traditional audience, really damaging for a show reliant on daily consistency, hurt ratings, and stability.
And some of the new directions the show tried didn't resonate either.
Fans really rejected some new focuses. The Santos mob dynasty introduced in the late '90s. didn't connect with many who preferred family drama.
And shifting the action away from Springfield.
Yeah, a lot of action shifted to that fictional island, San Cristobal. Didn't always sit well with longtime viewers who had decades tied to the traditional setting.
Okay, moving into the 2000s, that geographical split continued for a bit. Springfield and San Cristobal.
For a while, yeah. Reflecting those late 90s choices. You had the Santos mob drama in Springfield and the royal Winslow family intrigues in San Cristobal.
But that didn't last too long.
No, San Cristobal was largely eliminated as a primary setting by 2002. Focus came back to Springfield. And the Santos mob influence diminished too, eventually eliminated with Danny Santos's departure in 2005. A course correction, it seemed.
The early 2000s were also a time for celebrating the show's incredible, almost unimaginable longevity.
Absolutely. Massive milestones. 50th anniversary as a TV show on June 30, 2002.
And then the really big one.
70th broadcast anniversary in 2007, including the radio years. Truly astounding.
They did some special things to commemorate that 70th, acknowledging the deep history.
They did. Launched FindYourLight.net, highlighting outreach programs reflecting Erna Phillips's original message, and a special episode aired in January '07.
Where current cast played past figures.
Yeah. Played Erna Phillips and earlier cast members, reenacting historical moments. A beautiful meta-nod to the show's roots. They even brought back special beginning credits for a time. Pure nostalgia.
Around 2004, another significant change in production leadership, leading to dramatic transformations in the final years.
Ellen Wheeler, an Emmy-winning actress turned director, took over as EP in 2004. Brought in David Kreisman as head writer. Together, they started implementing substantial changes.
And some changes were clearly driven by budget concerns facing daytime TV.
Absolutely. Definite budget cuts led to eliminating several veteran actors, difficult but often necessary. The show also re-emphasized younger characters again.
And some controversial storylines.
Yeah, like the storyline involving cousins Jonathan and Tammy falling in love. Pushed boundaries. Speaking of Jonathan, played by Tom Pelphrey.
He was introduced around them.
Yeah, as Reva's long-lost son, quickly became a popular, complex character. Pelphrey won multiple Emmys for it.
Amidst these changes, there was even a really surprising, almost bizarre crossover event involving Marvel Comics.
This is such a weird piece of GL trivia. 2006, an episode featured Harley Cooper gaining heroic abilities.
Okay.
And this wasn't just a one-off. The storyline was semi-continued in an 8-page story in select Marvel Comics, Captain America, and Fantastic Four.
A soap opera crossing over with Marvel. That's truly unique.
How many can say that? Wild.
Despite challenges and sometimes low ratings, the show was still recognized by the industry for its quality right up until the end.
It's true. Despite dipping ratings, GL still garnered significant acclaim. Won Daytime Emmys for Best Writing and, incredibly, tied with Y&R for Outstanding Drama Series in 2007.
Still winning major awards late in its run.
Yeah, and other Emmys in '08 for technical achievements, music, sound mixing, editing, plus individual actor wins for Gina Tognoni and Tom Pelphrey. Showed they were still producing high-quality work.
But perhaps the most dramatic changes in the final 2 years came from a truly radical transformation in production style.
This overhaul happened under Ellen Wheeler in 2008. The goal was a more realistic experience, mimicking reality TV or single-camera dramas, trying to feel contemporary.
How did they implement this radical change?
A complete departure from tradition. Moved away from studio cameras, switched entirely to digital recording using handheld cameras, Canon XHE-1H TVs.
Handheld cameras. For soap.
Yeah. Allowed unprecedented freedom to film outdoor scenes on location in Peapack, New Jersey. Suddenly, characters were walking down real streets, sitting in real parks.
Visually, that must have created a very different look.
Massive shift. Employed a shaky cam style, lots of extreme close-ups, rapid cuts. For viewers used to stable shots, traditional lighting, deliberate pacing. It was jarring, disorienting, fundamentally changed the visual rhythm.
And they got resourceful with indoor scenes to save money.
Yes, repurposed real locations, used their own guiding light production offices as sets for motel rooms, nail salons, small businesses, gave them diverse sets without traditional construction costs.
So the idea was innovation, cost saving, hoping to boost ratings.
That was absolutely the hope.
Yeah.
Make it feel fresh, modern, but ultimately it didn't work in significantly increasing ratings.
Audience reaction was mixed.
Very mixed. Some appreciated the realism effort, but many longtime viewers found the style unsettling, difficult to watch, felt it sacrificed the familiar, comforting soap aesthetic.
Amidst these changes and struggles, the show did feature a storyline that became a massive fan favorite and was seen as groundbreaking.
Absolutely. The fan favorite same-sex romance between Natalia Rivera and Olivia Spencer. Otalia, as fans called them.
Played by Jessica Leccia and Crystal Chapel.
Incredible chemistry. Developed a powerful connection with the audience. Their love story was portrayed with sensitivity and depth. A landmark moment for LGBTQ+ representation in daytime.
And the actresses even worked together after GL ended.
Yeah, they starred together in the popular web series Venice. Shows the enduring popularity of their pairing.
In the show's final year, leading up to the end, there was an effort to bring back key characters for one last run.
Yes, a concerted effort. Bring back beloved characters for closure and nostalgia. Included Grant Alexander as Philip Spaulding in 2009.
Revealing he wasn't dead after all.
Right. His return immediately stirred the pot, interrupting Beth and Alan's marriage, trying to save Coop. Peter Simon returned as Ed Bauer, Krista Tesreau as Mindy Lewis, Maureen Garrett as Holly. Felt like a family reunion for viewers.
And then, the news that soap fans dread more than any cliffhanger.
CBS announced the cancellation of Guiding Light on April 1st, 2009.
April 1st. That must have caused confusion.
It did. Being April Fool's Day, some cast, crew, and viewers initially thought it was a cruel joke. Sadly, it wasn't. The end was really coming.
Procter & Gamble, the owners, tried to find a new home for it.
They did. Explored options cable, online, but ultimately unsuccessful. The final broadcast date on CBS was set for September 18, 2009.
How did the writers approach wrapping up decades of storylines in those final months?
Worked incredibly hard, brought back numerous past characters, resolved major storylines for core families, a delicate balance, satisfying endings for longtime viewers while still telling compelling stories.
We saw some major plot points resolved right up until the very end.
Yes, like Philip Spaulding dying from a mystery illness, then saved by a blood transfusion from Alan Spaulding.
Even though Alan wasn't his biological father.
Exactly. Packed with that irony. Then, Alan died from a heart attack right after saving Philip. A culmination of their complex relationship. His family later spread his ashes. Closure for that central character.
The final episode itself sounds like it was crafted with immense care, specifically for the dedicated fans.
It really was. Very pleasant, fan service-oriented, designed to give satisfying happy endings, not last-minute cliffhangers, but closure and hopeful continuity.
It's like a big farewell party for Springfield.
Definitely had that feel. Many characters gathered in the park for a large picnic, symbolic gathering of the community.
And they even gave viewers a glimpse into the future.
Yes, a lovely touch. Jump forward 1 year toward the end, showed where important relationships ended up, suggesting life continued beyond the final broadcast.
So who did we see reunited 1 year later?
Beloved couples. Philip and Beth were happy together, Rick and Mindy too. Olivia and Natalia were shown happy, picking up their adopted son Rafe from the army, cementing their family.
And many other past favorites returned just for those final episodes.
Absolutely. Lisa Brown as Nola Chamberlain, Melissa Hayden as Bridget Reardon, Morgan England as Dylan Lewis. A parade of fan favorites.
Any particularly sentimental moments?
Seeing Nola blow a farewell kiss to company, the hangout once owned by her family, that hit home for longtime fans.
Lots of happy endings and poignant moments for others too.
Billy Lewis and Vanessa Chamberlain remarried. Joined by Buzz and Lillian Raines, happiness for two core couples. And Lillian visited Maureen Bauer's grave.
The character whose death was so controversial.
Right. Lillian expressed deep regret for her affair with Ed that contributed to Maureen's death years prior. A powerful moment of acknowledgement decades later.
Other happy endings.
Fletcher Reed returned and took Alexandra on a cruise. Ed and Holly went on a trip together, showing enduring connections.
And then the ultimate final scene. The one every fan remembers, bringing the show full circle.
The very last scene concluded the longest, most central love story. Josh Lewis arriving at the lighthouse, finding Riva waiting. They declare their enduring love.
And there was that perfect callback to their history.
Yes. Josh asks Riva if she's ready for an adventure. She replies, simply, always. Echoing her promise, always, bud.
Brought their epic, tumultuous love story to a hopeful, full-circle moment.
Beautifully done, suggesting their adventure together would continue.
There was even a fun nod to another classic soap in the final episode.
Yes, James, Ashley, and Daisy leaving Springfield to relocate to Santa Barbara, California. A clear, charming nod to Santa Barbara, where actors like Justin Diaz and Marcy Walker had starred.
And the very last visual viewers saw.
Josh, Riva, and her young son climbing into Josh's pickup truck, driving away, lighthouse in the background. Then, the end. Fade out.
With that poignant song playing.
Together, by Michelle Branch. And they included incredible final visual cues reminding everyone of the show's astonishing history.
The revised tagline.
There is a destiny that makes us family, changed from the original brothers, reflecting the evolution from spiritual guidance to sprawling families.
And the montage of old title cards.
A rapid montage of title cards and announcers across nearly 6 decades on TV. Seeing those must have been a jolt.
Definitely. Leading into that final echo.
And now, the guiding light. A powerful, condensed journey through time. It really makes you think, how powerful are those visual and audio cues in connecting generations of viewers instantly to the show's deep history and their own memories?
The legacy of Guiding Light is immense, primarily defined by that incredible, unmatched longevity.
Without a doubt. Longest-running American soap opera. 72 years. A record that might never be broken now.
Though there is that interesting nuance about longest running.
Yes, fun fact. While GL is longest by years and episodes, As the World Turns had a longer total broadcast duration in hours.
Because ATWT was an hour long for longer.
Exactly. 13,763 hours for ATWT versus about 3,940 for GL. So longest in years, maybe not total minutes. Fascinating how we measure it, right?
Even after it ended, the show's impact and cast continued to be recognized.
Absolutely. Countless daytime Emmys throughout its run. Outstanding drama, writing, acting, technical awards, also Writers Guild, Directors Guild awards, consistently recognized for quality.
And the show hasn't disappeared from cultural memory. Cast members still appear together sometimes.
Not at all. As recently as 2016, Kim Zimmer, Michael O'Leary, Grant Alexander, Beth Chamberlain were on The Talk, reminiscing, part of CBS celebrating 30 years at #1 in daytime. The network still celebrated its legacy.
And you can still see former Guiding Light actors on current soaps today.
Yes, the talent pool migrated. Rick Hurst on General Hospital, Lawrence Sim-Victor on The Bold and the Beautiful, acting, writing, directing now, Cynthia Watros on General Hospital.
Their continued presence keeps the thread alive.
Testament to the talent that came out of GL, keeps a little piece of it alive on daytime today.
And for the incredibly dedicated, loyal fan base, there's still that glimmer of hope, isn't there?
There truly is. That enduring hope among devoted fans that someday, somehow, Guiding Light might be revived. If P&G revisits the idea, shows how deeply it resonated, how much it's missed.
Thinking back on the entire journey, from a simple lamp in a window to this global phenomenon spanning over 7 decades, it's truly remarkable. Makes you reflect on that deep, almost familial connection audiences form with these long-running shows.
Following families like the Bowers, Spaldings, Lewises, Coopers through generations of drama, joy, sadness, and yes, even cloning.
It was a constant presence in so many homes, a daily ritual.
What does it truly mean to have a guiding light in storytelling that lasts 72 years, even when the literal lamp faded? How does that shared viewing experience shape culture? Personal connections. It's a legacy far deeper than just plot twists.
Absolutely. It became part of the fabric of daily life for millions.
If you enjoyed this deep dive into the incredible sprawling history of Guiding Light, please show us some love.
Like this episode, subscribe to the Classic Soap Operas podcast for more dives into your favorite shows in television history. And please leave us a comment below. Share your favorite Guiding Light memory, character, or even the most outlandish storyline you remember.
We would absolutely love to hear from you and keep the conversation going. Thanks for joining us for this journey through Springfield's past.
It was a pleasure exploring this huge piece of television history with you. We'll see you next time for another deep dive.